Bobby Petrino's motorcycle scandal at Arkansas. When Bobby Petrino took over Arkansas football in 2008, he looked like the man who could finally push the Razorbacks into the SEC elite. By 2011, he had them right on the doorstep. An 11-2 record, a Cotton Bowl win, and the best two-year stretch the school had seen in decades. Fans believed the program had momentum. It felt like Arkansas was about to break through. And then, everything stopped with one ride. On April 1st, 2012, Petrino crashed his motorcycle on a country road outside Fayetteville. He broke ribs, injured his neck, and showed up to a press conference days later in a neck brace. The university said no one else was involved, but a police report told a different story. Petrino wasn't alone. Riding with him was Jessica Durrell, a 25-year-old former volleyball player he had just hired as a football staffer. It emerged that Petrino had been in a long-term, inappropriate relationship with Durrell and had secretly given her a $20,000 gift. Worse, he had misled his bosses about it all. Athletic director Jeff Long said Petrino had engaged in a pattern of misleading and manipulative behavior that damaged the school's reputation. On April 10th, 9 days after the accident, Arkansas fired Petrino for cause, ending his contract without the $18 million buyout. In 1 week, the Razorbacks went from rising power to national punchline. Petrino apologized and rebuilt his career elsewhere, but Arkansas never fully recaptured that moment. The crash didn't just end a season, it ended the Razorbacks' best shot at the SEC's top tier in a generation. Lane Kiffin leaving Tennessee abruptly. What happens when your head coach ditches you after just one season? Ask Tennessee fans going, they're still not over Lane Kiffin. In 2008, the Vols took a gamble, hiring 33-year-old Kiffin as the youngest coach in the SEC. He brought swagger, noise, and just enough promise to spark hope. The team went 7-6, but fans were excited. The future looked bright. Then came January 12th, 2010. Out of nowhere, Kiffin announced he was leaving, and after just 14 months, to become the head coach at USC. It was his dream job. He'd coached there before under Pete Carroll, and when that seat opened, Kiffin didn't hesitate. No long talks, no farewell tour, just gone. Tennessee fans? Furious. They lit trash cans on fire. They stormed the football complex. The betrayal stung. Not just the move, but the timing. Right before signing day, his exit plunged Tennessee into chaos, kicking off a decade-long spiral of failed coaches and broken momentum. Urban Meyer's Ohio State and Florida controversies. Urban Meyer was one of the most successful coaches in college football, but his time at both Florida and Ohio State was full of controversy. At Florida, he built a powerhouse team that won championships, but off the field, things were falling apart. In just 6 years, over 30 of his players were arrested, some for minor things like underage drinking, but others for serious crimes like assault, domestic violence, and even stealing a dead teammate's credit card. Meyer was accused of turning a blind eye, especially to his star players, who were said to be part of a circle of trust, a group that reportedly got special treatment and lighter punishments. There were claims that Meyer covered up failed drug tests by pretending players were injured, just so they could still play. He eventually stepped down in 2010, citing health reasons, though many believe the growing chaos around the program was also part of it. Then came Ohio State, where he again found success. But in 2018, another scandal hit. His assistant coach, Zach Smith, was accused of domestic abuse. Meyer first denied knowing anything, but it later came out that his wife did know, and there were strong signs that he knew too and didn't report it. He was suspended for 3 games for mishandling the situation and lying about it. Later that year, he retired again, blaming his health. But just like at Florida, controversy seemed to follow him out the door. Charlie Weis's Notre Dame collapse. What happens when you give a coach a $40 million deal before he's even finished one season? That's the wild ride of Charlie Weis at Notre Dame. In 2005, Weis arrived with an NFL resume and a Super Bowl glow. He'd worked with Tom Brady. Fans were pumped. Early on, he delivered. Brady Quinn was throwing bombs, Jeff Samardzija was catching everything, and the Irish went 9-3. The school got so excited they gave him a 10-year, $40 million contract after 7 games. But once the previous coach's players graduated, things fell apart fast. The defense? A mess. Conditioning? Lacking. Staff? Constant disagreements. By 2007, Notre Dame hit rock bottom with a 3-9 season and blowout losses to Michigan and USC. Even with top recruits, they kept losing to Navy, to Syracuse, to just about everyone. In 2009, after a 6-6 season, Notre Dame finally pulled the plug. The schematic advantage? Gone. The hype? Over. Notre Dame was left rebuilding and paying Weis not to coach. Rich Rodriguez's Michigan struggles. He tried to install a whole new system overnight, but Michigan wasn't built for that kind of change, and the transition was rocky from day one. When he was hired in 2008, Michigan fans were promised innovation and excitement. Rodriguez was famous for his fast-paced spread offense, and the hope was he'd bring the Wolverines roaring into a new era. But from day one, it felt like trying to fit a square peg into a winged helmet hole. The players weren't built for his system. The defense fell apart. His first season ended in a brutal 3-9 record, the worst in Michigan history. Ouch. Things slightly improved the next 2 years, but not enough. The offense started to click, but the defense never caught up. Then came NCAA violations over excessive practices, and it just just got messier. Rodriguez never connected with Michigan's old school culture. Alumni and boosters kept their distance. After 3 rocky years, he was fired in 2010 with a 6-18 Big Ten record. The experiment had failed. Michigan rolled the dice and came up short. Steve Spurrier's short Florida tenure, 1990 to 2001. What if your team's greatest coach also had a habit of stirring the pot and then ghosted for the NFL? That's the roller coaster story of Steve Spurrier at Florida. He took over in 1990 and didn't waste time. Spurrier turned the Gators into a national force, winning 6 SEC titles and a national championship in 1996 with his fast-paced, fun-and-gun offense. He wasn't just successful, he was loud, witty, and loved taking shots at rivals like Georgia and Tennessee. Fans loved it most of the time, but it wasn't all smooth. In Spurrier's very first season, Florida was hit with NCAA probation from violations under the previous coach. They had the best record but weren't allowed to compete for a title. Harsh start. Later, players got tangled in an agent scandal. Spurrier's response? Ban them from the facilities. A bold move, but maybe a sign things were slipping. He also clashed with fans. They booed. He clapped back. Once, he even said it'd be nice to play on the road because no one will boo you. By 2001, burned out and frustrated, he suddenly bolted for the NFL. He later admitted it was a bad plan. The legend walked, but not without baggage. Jim Tressel's Ohio State scandal, 2011. What if I told you a few tattoos brought down one of college football's most respected coaches? That's exactly what happened at Ohio State in 2011, and it's wilder than it sounds. Jim Tressel was a coaching legend, a sweater-vested icon who led Ohio State to national glory and Big Ten dominance. But then came the Tattoo-Gate scandal. It started when several players, including star quarterback Terrell Pryor, were caught trading championship rings, jerseys, and other team memorabilia for tattoos and cash at a local parlor. Harmless? Maybe to some, but totally against NCAA rules. Here's where it got messy. Tressel knew about the rule-breaking months before it became public, but instead of reporting it, he stayed silent. Lied to the university, lied to the NCAA, covered it all up. And when the truth finally came out, boom, suspensions all around. The players were banned for 5 games, and Tressel tried to take the hit with them by volunteering for a 5-game suspension too. But it was too late. The damage was done. In May 2011, after a tense meeting with school officials, Tressel resigned. The man who brought Ohio State so much glory walked away in disgrace, all because of a scandal involving tattoos, trinkets, and a cover-up. Ohio State's image took a hit. The NCAA came knocking, and one of college football's strongest programs suddenly found itself in cleanup mode. A bizarre, avoidable, and unforgettable fall from grace. Rick Neuheisel's NCAA violations at Washington, 2003. In the early 2000s, Rick Neuheisel was the head coach at the University of Washington. Young, confident, and riding high after bringing success back to the Huskies. He had led them to a Rose Bowl win and was seen as one of college football's rising stars. But in 2003, everything changed, and it had nothing to do with what happened on the field. It started with a March Madness bracket. Neuheisel took part in a high-stakes NCAA basketball pool, something millions of fans do every year. But for coaches and NCAA employees, it was against the rules. At first, Neuheisel denied it. Then the truth came out. He had participated in the pool along with other staff members. But here's the twist, and the rule itself was a bit murky. The NCAA's own handbook didn't clearly spell out the gambling restriction at the time. Still, the damage was done. Washington, already under NCAA probation for unrelated violations, decided to fire Neuheisel. The coach didn't go quietly. He sued the university for wrongful termination, and won. In 2005, the school settled for $4.5 million. Neuheisel's firing wasn't about wins or losses. It was about rules, reputation, and how fast public trust can vanish in college sports. His coaching career never fully bounced back, but the case became a landmark moment, a reminder that in the NCAA world, even a simple basketball bracket can bring down a powerhouse coach. Mike Leach's unorthodox coaching style. What happens when a mad football genius goes too far? That's the story of Mike Leach at Texas Tech, a coach known for wild playbooks, quirky interviews, and unfortunately, one huge controversy that got him fired. Leach was no ordinary coach. He ran the high-flying air raid offense, didn't even play college football himself, and quoted pirates in press conferences. But in 2009, things took a dark turn. One of his players, Adam James, the son of ESPN analyst Craig James, suffered a concussion. Instead of resting like you'd expect, Adam was reportedly made to stand in a dark room for hours without sitting or leaning. Why? Leach claimed it was to keep him out of bright light for medical reasons. The James family called it abuse. The university investigated, and in the middle of the drama, Leach refused to apologize. Texas Tech fired him right before their bowl game. Lawsuits flew back and forth for years, and while opinions still differ on what really happened, the fallout was huge. Leach's coaching journey didn't end there. He later rebuilt his career at Washington State and Mississippi State, but the Texas Tech fallout remains a major chapter in his wild, unforgettable legacy. Mack Brown's Texas letdown, 2014. For years, Mack Brown was the face of Texas football. When he arrived in Austin in 1998, he brought hope to a proud but restless program. And by 2005, he delivered everything fans had dreamed of: a national championship led by the electric Vince Young in one of the greatest title games ever played. Brown became a legend. But in college football, success doesn't freeze in time. After that championship, expectations at Texas went sky high. The Longhorns remained competitive, even making it back to the title game in 2009. But after that, things began to slip. The team lost its edge. Recruiting cooled off. Other schools, Alabama, Oregon, even Baylor, were moving faster, adjusting quicker. Texas somehow felt stuck. From 2010 to 2013, Texas struggled to hit 10 wins, something that had once felt automatic under Brown. The losses mounted. Fans grumbled. Boosters grew impatient. The magic was fading. In December 2013, after finishing 8-5, Brown announced he was stepping down. He wasn't forced out officially, but everyone knew it was time. Texas needed new energy. Brown, always graceful, didn't fight it. He walked away with over 150 wins, 2 Big 12 titles, and a national championship. His impact on Texas football, massive. But in the end, even legends get caught in the grind of change. Mack Brown gave Texas its glory days, but by 2014, the program knew it was time to chase them again. Bill Callahan's Nebraska offensive collapse, 2004 to 2007. What happens when a coach promises to flip the culture and flips it straight into disaster? I am talking about the story of Bill Callahan at Nebraska. Callahan was hired in 2004 after being fired by the NFL's Oakland Raiders. Callahan came in loud and proud. He ditched Nebraska's famous option offense for the NFL-style West Coast attack and told fans, "We take what we want." But what Nebraska fans got? Not much. In 4 seasons, Callahan went 27-22, including an ugly 5-7 final year. His teams gave up record-breaking points, like 76 to Kansas and 70 to Texas Tech, and Nebraska, once feared, became a laughingstock. The Huskers lost 3 home games in 1 season for the first time in nearly 40 years and missed a bowl in 2004, ending a 35-year streak. Despite top-ranked recruiting classes, player development flopped. Throw in a 5-game losing streak, a sideline throat-slashing gesture, and calling Oklahoma fans hillbillies, and things spiraled. After a humiliating 65-51 loss to Colorado, Nebraska legend Tom Osborne, now interim AD, made the call. Callahan was out. The experiment failed, big time. Jim Harbaugh's Michigan drama, 2023 to 2024. How do you win it all and still walk out the back door with controversy tagging along? That's what happened with Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. In 2023, Harbaugh led the Wolverines to their first national championship in decades, the ultimate college football prize. But the confetti had barely settled before the drama exploded. An investigation revealed that a Michigan staffer, Connor Stalions, had been secretly stealing opponents' play call signals. A big no-no in the NCAA. It was a full-blown scandal. Harbaugh faced a 10-year show-cause penalty, basically a giant red flag for any school hiring him. And Michigan was hit with fines and probation. Just weeks later, in January 2024, Harbaugh left the mess behind and jumped to the NFL, becoming head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. Brian Kelly's Notre Dame to LSU jump, 2021. Brian Kelly's departure from Notre Dame to LSU in 2021 shocked the college football world. Despite leading the Fighting Irish to multiple successful seasons, Kelly left for LSU, citing a desire to be in an environment that could offer more resources and opportunities to compete at the highest level. His move was seen by some as a betrayal, especially given Notre Dame's strong season and playoff aspirations. At LSU, Kelly faced immediate challenges, but eventually led the Tigers to a national championship, solidifying his decision. Mark Richt's decisions at Miami and Georgia, 2015 to 2018. Mark Richt's coaching career saw him at the helm of both Georgia and Miami. At Georgia, he achieved significant success, including multiple SEC championships. However, after a series of near misses in big games, he was let go in 2015. Richt returned to his alma mater, Miami, in 2016, aiming to rejuvenate the Hurricanes program. While he brought stability and respectability, the team never reached the heights expected, and Richt retired after the 2018 season, leaving behind a legacy of consistency and class. Todd Graham's rapid departures, 2011 to 2017. Graham's coaching career was a whirlwind, not always in a good way. In 2011, he took the job at Pitt and left after 1 season, texting players that he was off to Arizona State. Seriously, a text. At ASU, he found some early success, even winning a division title. But behind the scenes, it wasn't all sunshine. His intense, often abrasive coaching style led to constant staff turnover and shaky relationships. relationships. By 2017, after a lackluster season, ASU showed him the door. Things got rockier at Hawaii. Graham was hired in 2020, but by 2022, players accused him of mistreatment and toxic behavior. The backlash was loud, and he resigned. Talented? Sure, but Todd Graham's legacy is marked just as much by the bridges he burned as the games he won. Miles LSU missteps, 2016 to 2017. What happens when a championship coach runs out of time and touchdowns? That's the story of Les Miles at LSU. Miles was once the king of Baton Rouge, winning a national title in 2007. But by 2016, things had soured. The offense was sputtering, even with superstar Leonard Fournette, and LSU couldn't score in the fourth quarter. A heartbreaking loss to Auburn sealed it. 4 games in, with a 2-2 record, Miles and his offensive coordinator Cam Cameron were both fired. But the cracks had shown earlier. He'd nearly been let go in 2015 and faced constant heat over his conservative play calling and shaky clock management. Then it got worse. In 2021, reports revealed that Miles had been investigated back in 2013 for inappropriate behavior with female students, details LSU had kept quiet. That, plus recruiting violations that cost him 37 wins and hurt his Hall of Fame chances, tarnished his legacy. Jimbo Fisher's Florida State collapse, 2017. In 2013, Jimbo Fisher stood on top of the college football world. He had just led Florida State to a national championship. His quarterback, Jameis Winston, had won the Heisman Trophy. The Seminoles were undefeated. Fast, physical, confident. They looked unstoppable. For a moment, it felt like Fisher was building the next great dynasty. But just a few years later, that empire was crumbling. By 2015, the cracks had started to show. Off-field issues, recruiting gaps, and a defense that no longer struck fear. In 2016, they were good, but no longer great. And then came 2017. Florida State opened that season ranked in the top 5. Hopes were high, but in the first game, their starting quarterback got injured. Everything fell apart. They struggled week after week, barely staying bowl eligible. The team finished 7-6, their first losing season in 41 years. Behind the scenes, things were tense. Fisher was clashing with the administration over facilities and support. Some said he had mentally checked out. Others claimed the program had lost its identity. Then, just days before the regular season ended, Jimbo Fisher made a stunning move. He left FSU to take the head coaching job at Texas A&M, a school willing to pay him over $70 million and give him everything he asked for. Matt Rhule's Baylor and NFL hype, 2017 to 2020. In 2017, Baylor football was at rock bottom. The program had just gone through a massive sexual assault scandal that led to the firing of its head coach, school president, and athletic director. The team's reputation was in ruins. That's when Baylor turned to Matt Rhule. Rhule wasn't a big-name hire at the time. He came from Temple, a smaller school in Philadelphia, where he had quietly built a tough, disciplined program. At Baylor, he was stepping into chaos. His first season, a brutal 1-11 record. The team was outmatched almost every week, but Rhule didn't panic. He kept building, recruiting character guys, reshaping the culture, and focusing on development over hype. By 2019, just 2 years later, Baylor shocked everyone. The Bears finished 11-3, made it to the Big 12 championship game, and even landed a spot in the Sugar Bowl. Suddenly, Rhule wasn't just rebuilding, he was winning, and the NFL noticed. In January 2020, the Carolina Panthers offered Rhule a head coaching job. It came with a massive 7-year, $60 million contract, a bold move for a coach with no NFL experience. But it showed how much his Baylor turnaround meant. He was seen as a program fixer, a culture changer. Steve Sarkisian's USC and Alabama issues, 2015 to 2021. Steve Sarkisian was a rising star in college football. By 2014, he was the head coach at USC, one of the sport's biggest brands, with a reputation as a brilliant offensive mind. He had coached at Washington before and had even been an assistant at USC during the Pete Carroll era. But behind the scenes, Sarkisian was dealing with a serious personal struggle: alcohol. In 2015, it all came crashing down. Reports began surfacing of Sarkisian showing up to team events under the influence. At one USC booster event, he slurred his words during a speech. He was asked to take a leave of absence. A day later, he was fired. It was a public and painful fall for someone once seen as a future coaching legend. Sarkisian checked into rehab and stayed out of the spotlight, but he didn't disappear. In 2016, Alabama head coach Nick Saban gave him another chance, starting as an analyst, then promoting him to offensive coordinator. Sarkisian helped lead one of the most explosive offenses in the country. His play calling was sharp. His reputation began to rebuild. By 2021, he had earned another top job, head coach at the University of Texas. Butch Jones' Tennessee fiasco, 2013 to 2017. When Tennessee hired Butch Jones in 2013, they were hoping for a fresh start. The Volunteers had been struggling to recapture their glory days, and Jones came in with confidence, energy, and a plan to brick by brick rebuild the program. Fans bought in, recruits came, hype grew, and at first, it looked like it might work. Tennessee started winning more games. By 2015 and 2016, they were back in the national conversation. They beat Florida, they beat Georgia, they had big comeback wins in last last-second miracles. But behind the scenes, something wasn't clicking. For all the talent on the roster, the team kept falling short in big moments. Fans started to question the coaching decisions. Then came 2017. Tennessee started the season 4-6 with no clear direction. The offense stalled. The defense broke down. The energy was gone. And after a crushing loss to Missouri, the university had seen enough. Butch Jones was fired mid-season. Just like that, the brick-by-brick plan came crumbling down. But the drama didn't end there. Years later, in 2025, Jones filed a $100 million lawsuit against the NCAA. He claimed he was unfairly blamed for rule violations and the vacating of wins during his time at Tennessee. It was a wild turn in a story that already felt chaotic. Gus Malzahn, Auburn's offensive roller coaster. In 2013, Auburn University hired a man who seemed like the perfect fit, Gus Malzahn. He had already been an assistant coach there and helped design their fast, creative offense. Now he was back. This time as the head coach, and in his very first year, he made magic. Auburn won the SEC championship and came within seconds of winning the national title. The plays were fast, the crowds were loud, and Malzahn looked like a genius. But after that, things got bumpy. Auburn's offense, which was once fun and explosive, started to slow down. Some years they beat big rivals like Alabama. Other years they barely made it to a bowl game. The team couldn't stay consistent. One season they'd win 10 games, the next they'd win 6. Fans started to get frustrated. The school was paying big money, but not getting big results. By 2020, Auburn had seen enough. They fired Malzahn after 8 seasons. But here's the surprising part. They still had to pay him $21.7 million to leave. It was one of the largest coaching buyouts in college football history. So why was he let go? Not because he was terrible, but because he couldn't keep the team great every year. Auburn wanted more than just pretty good. They wanted championships. Gus Malzahn gave Auburn some big moments, but in the end, the highs didn't last. And in the SEC, that's what matters most. Paul Bear Bryant, Alabama's legendary coach. What if the greatest coach in college football history had a few chapters he'd rather you forget? That's the case with Paul Bear Bryant, the legendary Alabama coach whose name still echoes through stadiums, but whose career wasn't all trophies and cheers. In 1963, Bryant found himself in a wild legal brawl. The Saturday Evening Post accused him and Georgia's athletic director of trying to fix a game. Yes, fix a game. Bryant sued for libel and walked away with a $300,000 settlement. It was one of the first major defamation cases involving a public figure, and it rocked the sports world. Then there were the hard hits, literally. In 1961, after a bruising game against Georgia Tech, the same magazine claimed Bryant encouraged violent play. Another lawsuit followed, another controversy, and then there's race. While other schools began recruiting black athletes in the 60s, Alabama lagged behind. Bryant didn't sign his first black player until 1970. Whether it was the times or something more, it's a stain on an otherwise historic career. That said, by 1973, a third of his starters were black, showing a shift in direction. By the early 80s, health problems and a few rough seasons caught up with him. Even the Bear knew it was time. He stepped down in 1982, saying his team deserved better. Frank Beamer, Virginia Tech's decline post-retirement. For nearly 30 years, Frank Beamer was the heart of Virginia Tech football. He became head coach in 1987, and over time he turned a small program into a national powerhouse. His teams were tough, disciplined, and always competitive. He led the Hokies to 23 straight bowl games and even made it to the national championship game in 1999. In Blacksburg, Beamer wasn't just a coach, he was a legend, but all great eras come to an end. Beamer retired after the 2015 season. The school wanted to keep the success going, so they hired Justin Fuente to take over. In the beginning, things looked promising, but the winning didn't last. Year by year, the team's performance dropped. The energy faded. Big wins became rare. By 2021, Virginia Tech football no longer felt like what Beamer had built. Fans were frustrated. Recruits weren't excited. The stadium wasn't as full. Fuente was eventually fired. Then came Brent Pry, a new coach with a new hope. But in 2025, after starting the season 0-3, Pry was let go too. It's been almost a decade since Beamer left, but Virginia Tech is still searching for its identity. That's the hard part about replacing a legend. The shadow is long and the pressure is heavy. The program that once played for championships is now stuck in rebuild mode, still chasing the standard that Frank Beamer set so long ago. If you've enjoyed this breakdown of the wildest coaching collapses in college football history, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We've got more coming. Rivalries that disappeared, dynasties that fell apart, and history of the sport we all love, one story at a time.